Hey guys, this is Toddie1Skip. This is Issues with Toddie1Skip, and this is Issues with Cults. So, for obvious reasons, you know, why do I have an issue with cults? Is because I think everybody should have their own way of thinking, and as long as they don't harm other people, I think that they should be treated with love, and if you can't do that, at least treat them with respect. Okay, so that's the way that I feel. I feel like judging people is completely wrong. And if you wanted to get religious about it, it says it in the Bible. And a lot of these cults um, claim to be religious and claim to be getting direction from God Himself, or from other people that claim to get messages from God. So, and it says don't judge. So, right there's a big contradiction. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about now, for instance, the Frankie family. And, apparently Jodi Hildebrandt had started, had gotten to know, or was introduced to the Frankie family about 2 years ago, and within that time, these people have been married for um, a really long time, at least over a decade, probably a couple decades. Their oldest daughter is 20 now. So maybe they had problems in their marriage, but how did this one person come in and change things up and change a whole belief system in somebody? Because that's what it is. Leaders of cults change belief systems in people to make them believe what they want them to believe. I was going to say what they believe, but that's not always true, because what the cult leader believes sometimes is different than what they want their followers to believe. And it's all about power and control and greed. So, but how does that happen? Like, how does somebody go from thinking to halfway normal, or what we consider normal thinking, to that's so extreme? So I think that there's a few things that make that happen. I am not a counselor in this. I was a drugs counselor. I worked in a jail. Um, and I worked in a residential rehab that oftentimes was jail or this residential rehab for youths. And when I say youths, the youngest kid was probably 12, and that wasn't common. They averaged about 16. Uh, well, 16, 14 to 16 years old. We even had a kid in there that was 19. So, and I've done this for probably about 17 years between both jobs. But that was a while ago. So I have since, you know, I since have gone and learned more about like religions and stuff like that I've had interests in. But I've often wondered, how do people get into cults? And I think that that's a common question when you listen to, everybody wants to know, right? How does that happen? And everybody has their ideas. Here's what I think in the Frankie. I'm just going to talk about the Frankie thing uh, and the Hildebrandt. So I think Jodi Hildebrandt is a gay woman. I think she's a gay woman who has been in conflict with herself. She has been in conflict with herself. Jodi Hildebrandt, I think, is a gay woman who has been in conflict with herself for decades. She's a divorced woman with older children that apparently want nothing to do with her. Her MO is exactly the same all the time, and that is to put a wedge between a husband and a wife, empower the woman under her control, Jodi's control, not even under the woman's control, but under Jodi's control, and basically emasculate the man. That's just the truth. The man sleeps, gets kicked out of the bed, goes to the floor, from the floor probably goes to another room, but ultimately leaves the living space, and leaves the living space easily to the woman, no fighting about it. And then Jodi makes it worse by, instead of having them engage in communication, she tells them to cease it. And these people follow this. So why? Why? So in the case of Ruby Frankie, you could see before, you could see videos of Ruby, just her, it was so extreme. Her punishments were just incredibly extreme. Everybody's seen the video of her wanting to cut off, or her showing her daughter that she's going to cut off her dolly's head. With the, I mean, like, showing her that she's going to do it. Because I guess Eve, the child, was, cutting up stuff, which kids do. I think that there's a better way. Like, why wasn't it just like, I remember my parents said, don't do that. And you know what? We kind of didn't do that. So why couldn't it just be, hey, like, that's destroying my things. You wouldn't want me to destroy your things. How would you feel if I went in there and just started cutting up your stuff? You didn't have to show a visual. The visual is what made it so extreme, and the way she did it was what made it so extreme. I'm not sure that Jodi Hildebrandt was in the picture at this time. Okay? You saw conflict with Ruby Frankie when she was crying, saying, I'm trying to protect my kids. I gave up my YouTube channel. Honestly, you saw conflict with her, and you saw Jodi Hildebrandt reaching out for her. You see a connection, and it's not a play on words. That's something, their company that Jodi Hildebrandt had started called Connections with an X. But you saw the connection legitimately between Jodi and Ruby. So, is Ruby gay? She might not be gay, but she had, I say had because I don't know how she feels now, but she certainly had at the time some kind of love or admiration for Jodi. You could see it. You could definitely see it. Now, maybe she needed somebody like Jodi to validate the way she punished her children, because she had almost 18,000 phone calls from people watching her behavior and the way she parented online, to have 18,000 phone calls, almost 18,000 phone calls to CPS or whatever it's called in Utah, where they lived, or where they're still living, I guess. I don't know. Ruby's in jail. Anyway, so does that happen? I think that in a lot of cases, when you start worshiping a cult leader, a lot of times I think it is an attraction. It's obviously an attraction, but I think a lot of times it's a physical attraction. Like in the case of Charles Manson, I think a lot of those women were physically attracted to him. I don't know why, and I think that might not necessarily be the case with Jodi Hildebrandt. I think that she had a way of manipulating, but I think that it's like-minded as well. Like, there was a woman that said that the two younger children the two middle children, Pam Botcher, the one that picked them up and the president of that Connections, that those kids came over and did housework and other chores one of them worked. One of them had a job because that's where she was picked up from. So I just don't. I don't know why this woman was intent on taking children's childhoods away from them and turning them into these horrible memories is what it's going to be, you know? So I think in the case of Ruby Franke that, there was evil in her, and you saw the enjoyment she had out of punishing her kids. She would laugh, and she knew what she was doing was wrong, because when she was called out on live YouTube feeds by her children, Chad, her oldest son, and some of the other kids, Chad, I think, did it intentionally, and kudos to Chad, about the bed situation. We know that there was a little bit more to that than him pranking his brother. He actually did have a BB gun that apparently he put in his brother's face. Still, you can't, it doesn't go together, taking a bed away from somebody for 7 months and what he did. You should have taken the gun away, of course, and you should have maybe taken his electronics away, because if he's not responsible enough to have a gun, maybe he misjudged how responsible he was for having electronics. Like, I could see that parlay into that, but not, man, you sleep on the floor or the beanbag or the couch, but you've lost all your privacy. Like, I don't understand how the one had to do with the other. Still not a good thing that Chad did that. Of course you don't do that. And Chad admitted to doing that. We don't know if the BB gun was loaded. It doesn't matter. You don't play with guns like that. Okay? So, but still the punishment didn't match the crime. Right? But you still saw that she was embarrassed by it, because you saw her face online that, people didn't know that. We took your bed away for 7 months. Yeah, we did. We took his bed. You know what I mean? So, and about, we didn't know that our audience doesn't know that I yell at you. When one of the kids said, yeah, but you yelled at me. And this little innocent voice, yeah, she like chuckles. You could see that she knows her behavior is wrong. So she knows it. I hope that plays into the court case in the favor of the children. And I hope this woman goes to jail for a really long time. But Jodi Hildebrandt, she has done this to so many people. So many people. She did it to her niece. So how did she convince her sister not to believe her niece? How did she convince all these people? How did she convince the Mormon Church that what she was doing was good? And then the Mormon Church, they had to have heard things. Come on, this woman was called upon so many times. Not only was CPS called on for Ruby Franke, but there were phone calls about Jodi Hildebrandt in her neighborhood. Because when the phone call came through with Russell at the neighbors, and the neighbor calling, he says, we know the bad stuff going on at that house. Like as if it was like absolutely no secret, but nobody did anything about it. So she became empowered by an entity that most people would trust and go to at the most vulnerable time. So here she's found, and that's where most of her clients, a good portion of her clients, the majority of her clients came from. So vulnerable time, with recommended by somebody who you trust, who's reputable, believing that you're being put in the hands of somebody else who is reputable, and just follow the rules. And that's the way you go. So, is it the Mormon Church? Or is it Jodi Hildebrandt? now that I'm saying this out loud. Because the Mormon Church facilitated a lot of this. So people in the Mormon Church, people outside, some people outside the Mormon Church refer to the Mormon Church as a cult. And they do dictate a lot of rules to you. And you do get punished if you don't follow those rules, not necessarily the laws of the United States of America here, right? Clearly. So what do you call that? There's a lot of good Mormons out there. There is. I think that when people follow religion, that they're looking for the answer. How do I live this life right? But I think that there's something inside of you that says that's wrong. That the way that she's saying it, it's wrong. I mean, God gave us our common sense too, and free will. And like the guy Adam Steed, whose interview has come down, she destroyed his family and destroyed this man's life. But this man went back into his house and said, no, this is my house too. I want to work on this marriage. If it's not what you want, you go into the other room. I mean, like he finally got it together. So he knew this is wrong. This doesn't make any sense. Like, this is one person. What makes her right? Why is she the one with the answer? Maybe she's not. So I think that a few people probably questioned her, because if that was her MO, a few people probably questioned her. Maybe Frankie questioned her too. But instead of listening to his own insides, he foregoed that. He said, forget that, this is the way because she says so. And this is what she's saying, and she's right. And she's the one with the degree. She's still a human being. She might have a degree. She was using it for evil. It doesn't make, just because somebody has a degree doesn't mean that what they're doing is right or correct. So I think something inside of you, and I think that when we were watching that interview with Ruby Frankie, and she was crying and saying that she loved her children and was protecting her children, and that she gave up that YouTube channel, I think she was really trying to convince herself that she was doing the right thing. You still have to take accountability. You see sores on your children. You see your children being inhumanely treated, and somewhere you think God is involved in that. I just, no. And that is not, there's probably people saying, yeah, because look at what happened with Jesus. Look at what God had Jesus go through. Your children are not the sons of God or the daughter of God. Your children are helpless children. This isn't godly. So I think that definitely Ruby did struggle. Ultimately, the darker side of her won. And I think, that if that behavior, the evil laugh, is something that's innately in her. I don't think that has anything at all to do with Jodi Hildebrandt. I think Ruby Franke's evil laugh in sadistic ways, I think that Jodi might have exploited that, but I think that that was inside of Ruby Franke. I think she liked it. I think she liked making people hurt, and certainly I think Jodi liked making people hurt. And I think that in order to give up your own beliefs and to follow somebody else's, that there's either a physical attraction, a mental attraction, there's definitely vulnerability, and the referral of a bigger entity, which in this case was the LDS. And that's what I think happened here. So, I hope that the LDS owns their responsibility in this, and that they certainly change their ways. They need to do more than rebrand themselves. They need to fix the systemic part of that church. All right, so that's it for me. It's Toddie1Skip. Issues with Toddie1Skip and issues with cults. Follow, like, love, share. Thanks for letting me be part of your day.